So today we'll talk a lot about the VRNI network inside, and I'll lead it off with why do you need this? Why do you need this new approach? And how do you monitor the modern network, right? We all are used to a certain way the networks were. Today we'll cover how the network has evolved, and along with it, how the monitoring of that network also needs to evolve along with it. So I'm Sesh Sayani, Director of Product Management, head of Product Management for VRNI Network Insight. Been at VMware for 3 years. Now, quick agenda. So we'll talk about the transformation to the modern network, now how a VMware perspective, obviously, and what we think are some of our cool things that make the network the modern way right now, the way it is. Also, what are the monitoring needs of this modern network? Some of us are used to a certain set of tools. All of us grew up with those. How do those tools need to evolve along with it? And why we think vRNI Network Insight fits that bill perfectly. Now, I just want to throw this architecture out, and I might have taken this from the web, but here's how all of us are used to the traditional conventional data center architecture, right? The classical leaf edge spine, Tor edge core, and then the Ethernet and the VMs and the bare metals kind of played in there. The applications were kind of siloed in this world. We knew how to do this. We had a lot of tools that monitored this perfect in the campus, accessing it. It's all goodness, right? We all know how this is done, and that's the world has been maybe about 5 to 6 years back. But fast forward to where we are right now, and this is our version of the modern multi-cloud network here, where the data center still exists. All this architecture on the left still exists there, absolutely, and the apps are still there. But it's surrounded by a bunch of other things now, right? Could be, for example, a remote user, work from anywhere right now is pretty prevalent. We've been in that mode for about more than a year now. How do they access these applications? Migration to the public cloud, specifically all the hyperscalers, for example, the applications are now stretching from the data center into the cloud. For example, where is the application anymore? And also the branch. Let's not underestimate the branch itself, right? The branch being, the SD-WAN option of accessing from the remote branch into a data center application or to a SaaS application in the cloud. How does that work, right? How do you monitor that? Now, underlying all that is a variety of things in the SD and the firewalling. Where's the network and the security operator kind of mushing up their personas a little bit? How do they bring the firewalling part into it? The advanced load balancer, it has taken a big leap in how you do the load balancing for this applications as they scale out. We talked about the SD-WAN, and then let's not forget the cloud native world of these applications, right? Lambda functions or Azure functions, or container services as well. So underlying again, we've gone from VMs and bare metals now into containers and public cloud in a variety of ways. As you can see, an existing traditional monitoring tool is not necessarily suited to go, address all these various spaces, right? Yes, you might have point tools for specific areas, but if you take a network operator persona, take a step back, and their users are, everywhere, accessing from anywhere, how do you monitor their health, and how do you monitor the application health versus the infrastructure health? And is there a viewpoint of presenting it from one place? And over the next 2 hours, we'll show you why it makes sense to do that. Now, I do want to, again, we have all been in the legacy world. I mean, I don't want to call it legacy as much as classic, right? And from heritage, you pick the right word there. But the idea is that we need to move ourselves into that modern world as well. And we'll talk about a new approach. And I'm going to quickly lay out this, right? And from a legacy perspective, you get the data silos, you get the tool sprawl, the packets in the net flow, thank God for them, right? to get the visibility into this. How do you poll information, SNMP, SSH, box by box view? Very network centric, right? Not necessarily an application centric, sometimes reactive. And then setup is a challenge as well in different vendors and so on. The way we look at this is you need all this, right? We are not saying that you don't need that. You absolutely need packets and net flow and polling and all that goodness stuff. But we need to evolve along with the network evolution as well. How do you converge the data, for example, the virtual to the physical? There's no point troubleshooting an application when you don't know what is the underlying network that is harming the application or taking up the capacity of the application, for example. How do you help that from a network operator persona? Again, seamless across SDDC, the on-premises software-defined data center, to the hybrid and the multi-cloud, especially as you walk into a public cloud, for example. How does that application stretch? Where's the application? What is, for example, a direct connect access from AWS to the on-prem? Your application owner doesn't care, or your application user doesn't care where it is, but your network operator does care, right? Where is it? Who is causing the bottlenecks, for example? Again, we talk about the app to infra that is becoming more and more critical as the line of business that creates those applications. They are the ones who are making the applications. They have an SLA for running those applications, but the infrastructure needs to support it, right? You cannot just, and then how does the infrastructure evolve and tune itself to support that application SLA? When we talk about assurance and verification from a proactive perspective, now the reason why this is important is, we heard about this term intent-based networking thrown around, but the idea behind that is, as you design your networks, you really create business intents and policies, and then make sure your networks, virtual or physical, we've spent a lot of time on the physical world. The virtual networks are also designed accordingly to make sure those business intents are kept in place, right? There are no violations happening. And then, it's beyond polling. You need to stream out, right? People are creating their own data lakes to do their own analysis as well. Can't be just a siloed vendor tool. So how do you stream out information from these modern tools so that they can make their own analysis? An operator use case, that persona shift that we are seeing, is an SRE user inside organization. How do they take all this data and then make their own analysis for building out their infrastructure? And then obviously rapid time to value. SaaS is super critical, right? You cannot just have it as an on-premises tool. As customers' mind shift is changing from an on-premises to the cloud, they're also evolving about the management plane being a SaaS-based consumption model as well. So this is how we see the evolution from the legacy heritage classic world to the modern tools, and how vRNI does a vRealize Network Insight fits into those as well. Now, how does vRNI fit in? Just introducing vRNI itself, the way we get this information is from all these various pieces is through a variety of ways, right? Obviously, we focus heavily on the data center, the private cloud, where we made our claim and fame, but now we have expanded into the physical infrastructure as well. Cannot do it without the physical infrastructure. How does the connectivity look like, whether it is an L2, L3 switch, routers, ACLs, firewalls, etc., right? You cannot really troubleshoot an application unless you know where the hops that it is going through. We talk about the branch as well. We extended our support into the branch, especially with VMware SD-WAN Bellow Cloud. As the application users are logging in, is there something somewhere in the network that is causing the jitter for them? If you're talking to if you're doing a Zoom, we're all on Zoom here. If an user is having a Zoom issue, where is it in the branch that's the problem? Or in some cases, it might be routed through the edges that might be the problem. We talk about the hybrid cloud. The application now is transforming itself from a VM monolithic 3-tier architecture to an containerized based architectures, right? I mean, pods and services are pretty crucial as the line of business owners tear down these applications. And finally, the virtual desktops, work from anywhere, we're all in this world. How does that access this application as well? So if you put all this together, you need a variety of ways to there's no single industry standard way to get this information. I mean, anybody says that, it's not speaking truth, but the idea here is that we need a variety of ways to get information, whether it is traffic flows, metrics, events, stream of information coming in, native integrations to these various vendors, stitching it through the metadata, configs and APIs, right? So we need to collect all this information, put them together, so present a unified view. Right? And then we'll obviously need to evolve to add more streaming. I mean, GNMI comes in play, packets come into the play. So as there are more ways of collecting information, we will also evolve to pick those up from these vendors as well.
Hey, Sesh.
Yes, sir.
Just really quick, obviously, this is another kind of delivering on the promise that VMware is making about kind of any platform, any software, right? Any marketing. I wonder, does this include both IPv4 and IPv6 workloads and infrastructure?
A good question. So IPv4, absolutely yes. As you know, IPv6 is on a roadmap, and this is a hard commit roadmap that we are looking at for this year. I mean, as you know, Chris, I think Chris was the one who asked the question, right? Sorry, I didn't get your name, but VMware sells a lot into the government, education, healthcare, right? I mean, that's a big prime and butter, as we would call us in our and whether it is IPv6, whether it is FIPS, whether it is STIGs, that's a huge priority for us, Chris, and that is definitely on our roadmap, immediate short-term roadmap to deliver.
Awesome, that's good to hear.
And you're absolutely right. IPv6 is, I mean, this is not just government healthcare. We have large financial organizations who said, yep, nope, no, not deploying till we have the IPv6 in there, right? So they run out of the space.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And that includes both monitoring as well as management of vRNI itself.
Yes, both from a deployment. I mean, you might phase it out to say management first, then the control plane, the traffic flows later, but definitely both together is how we're looking at it.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So again, I mean, as you're right. So that's IPv6 is a big play for us as well, and that also stretches into whether that workload is in the on-premises or VMware's own private cloud in the hyperscalers, whether it's VMware on AWS, etc. Now, if I flatten that out, I'm going to go a little faster here. If I flatten that out, if you flatten that architecture out, all the various pieces, we kind of reversed it, right? Rather than look from a network operator in, let's look from an application out, right? If you know all the assets, why not start with the applications? See, the personas of how do you troubleshoot an application from a networking persona, right? How do they is an application has latency, has issues, and is business intense? How is it performing? Versus the security part of it. Have you secured it? As you know, we are vRNI with NSX is a tight stitch with the head and tied to the hip and the head. How do we provide securing your application? For example, we know the traffic going on. We know the tiers of the application. What does the micro-segmentation, the macro-segmentation look like? How do you? And then once you secure the traffic, how do you audit it? Right? A lot of times we hear, hey, I know I secured the policy, but I don't see a hit count. Right? Can you tell us? And then, by the way, what we're also seeing is, if we concede that you're going to have NSX and the physical firewalls, the question that customers are asking us is, hey, can you show in vRNI a firewall rule hit by Palo Alto or a checkpoint plus NSX together, right? Because the flows are actually hopping through multiple points in the network, right? Can you show us that? So we are also looking to provide, as much as we have a lot of information for the NSX, we are also looking at providing that same level of information for the physical firewalls as well to show that rule level visibility. So quickly, again, you might be wondering, what is all this, agnosticity, right? I mean, this is what it is. We cover. I mean, you can pick off scratch off the top three of pretty much everything, right? Whether it's the switch vendors, the firewall vendors, also integrating with other third parties like ServiceNow, Infoblox, our own stuff, right? VMware Cloud, vRealize Operations, Velo Cloud. We are also being agnostic from a Kubernetes perspective. We understand that the Kubernetes world is going to be, whether it's naked Kubernetes or OpenShift or our own VMware Tanzu, for example. How do you stitch all that together, right? So we totally understand that. So the idea is that here is a quick way to know for all the vendors that we're working with, and this list constantly keeps evolving as we get more support too. Now, just so that we know that this is not, I'm not making this stuff up, right? This is a product, obviously, we can't share the customer name, but this is one of the largest healthcare providers in the world who actually uses a vRNI cloud, or a vRNI SaaS, as we call it, to deploy in their environment, and they're monitoring it at scale. Everything that we talked about, right? They have VMs, they have different data centers, they have physical infrastructure being monitored as well, and looking at public clouds, for example. And as they were evolving their data centers and their architectures of applications, they wanted a single monitoring tool, and this is how they use it, right? I mean, you can see through the various things there. I won't read off, but this is in real world, in production of our largest customers out there. And there are other publicly referenceable customers on our website as well. I won't go through them, but who have migrated from the on-prem to VMware Cloud, who also use vRNI to do that. So this is not a pie in the sky, but real world scenarios that are out there. Now, I just want to quickly step back a little bit and say we're not forgetting the network persona, right? I mean, we all are used to, yeah, great, Sesh, you got all that, that's fine, but what does a network operator look at, for example? So this is something that we talked about, and Brighton and Matt will double click on this a little bit in the sessions, is how does a physical network topology look like once you discover the whole thing? And where we brought the two worlds together is this virtual network into the physical network. And then obviously, as we build out our roadmap, we'll bring the cloud and the SD-WAN into it as well, into this topology view and the intents view. But the idea is that when we talked to you last time, we were still separate. The VeriFlow acquisition was a separate entity, or just acquired, but we hadn't merged the products yet. But here's the way the merge happened, and we are in production right now with this solution as well. Again, intents being business intents out of box as well as user defined. Quickly, and I want to take a step back and say, what is the app to infra that I talked about, right? So I just want to quickly walk through that, how it looks like from our customer's manifestation. Here's an application that we group based on our boundary conditions, but based on our boundary definitions of application tier. What are the negative traffic, bad flows that have degraded over time? Look at that. Look at the flows themselves that are abnormal. So we are an analytics engine, a time machine that we are constantly looking at the flows, seeing if the flow has degraded over time. We get those round-trip latencies, etc., from NSX. We stitch that together. And then look the path. Now, once you get the flows, some tools might just stop at the flows, but you really want to know where is that flow going through from one VM to another VM, and where are all the hops that it's going through the underlay, right? That's become super important as a network operator to troubleshoot that application. Could be the VM problem, could be a physical switch problem, could be the edge problem, right? A variety of ways. And then finally, you may want to actually lock it down to say, hey, this switch has some flaps or some ports that are going down. Let's go troubleshoot that switch. Maybe it's bleeding some capacity as well. So maybe that's the problem area. So again, bring the app to the infra layer as well is super important from a network operator's persona. Now, what we also wanted to do was, double down a little bit over the next few sessions to talk about the application migration. And as the reason I say this application migration is important as we transition from the legacy networks to the modern networks is, how do you move those workloads, right? You might have a lot of virtual environments, a lot of physical servers. Customers still have them. You want to group those and then say, by the way, these are workloads that could be moved off into a VMware cloud or a vSphere cloud running in the hyperscaler world, right? And what does that look like? What is the traffic profile of those applications? Should I move the entire thing? Should I move a web tier because that is the quickest way to move it to a SaaS, to a public cloud, a hyperscaler, for example? Or do I move the entire lift and shift? But we need to present it in a way that the customers can make the decisions to move it, and then we'll cover specifically what those are. How do we create the application boundaries, and then how do we migrate it off? Help the migration wave. That's a big curve as the customers migrate the networks from the legacy to the modern as well. The second area that we want to do is, okay, great. Now, can we actually help the design of the network? What are the business intents as you get to the modern network? What are we looking for? What is the segmentation intents? What are the reachability intents? How is the path looking from a physical, the path topology that I showed? How does it look from a VM to a VM going over the physical switch? The ACLs, are the ACLs blocking it? Maybe the firewall is allowing it, but the switch ACL is blocking it. How does that look like, right? What are those intents? And somebody might have done fat fingering, and then you might have broken it up, right? That's an area that we want to focus on, and we will do a demo on that. The third area that is super important also is, okay, great, we found an error. The app is a problem. How do we guide you navigate you through the various nooks and corners, right? Which is the problem area? Rather than you visually deciphering it, can we actually throw it up to you to say, here is a problem. It's an NSX edge problem and a physical switch problem that might be causing your application to slow down. So we want to give you that view as well. It's a work in progress. It's an early access thing, and we'll talk about that as we build out that function. And finally, the work from anywhere, pop-up clinics, the branch offices, how do they access into the data center? And then we want to troubleshoot that application specifically, whether it's a SaaS application, whether it is accessing the data center itself. We want to be able to troubleshoot that as well. Again, tying it back into a modern network, an app to the infra troubleshooting scenarios as well. So we'll cover over the next 4 sessions, we'll cover through all these areas.
I had a quick question, just in terms of
Sure.
market position. So yes. In terms of covering this, how do you see this different versus application performance monitoring? And where's the difference? Where do you partner up? Where do you see the ecosystem? How are you seeing that as a different landscape?
Sure. As you know, sorry, I missed who asked the question. So application performance management could be divided up into, are you looking at just the API level application performance, or is it A and PD, right? The application and the network performance as well. In this case, as you can see, we are looking at the network performance as well. We're not looking at the API tracing and so on and so forth, right? That's the space that is carved out for applications. We're not delving into that. But typically, think of it as a ServiceNow guy comes in and says, somebody complained to them saying, hey, this application slowed down for me, right? And the assumption is that they have gone through all their API tracing, and then they found out that the APIs are performing well. It's somewhere in the network. And then now you have this ticket, and then you just don't know, or the operator doesn't know where all the hops that this application might be hopping over. And then we want to carve out that space and say, yep, that's a sweet spot for vRNI itself. Now, from a ecosystem partnering perspective, yes, we integrate with ServiceNow, as I mentioned, right? We do integrate with ServiceNow. We also totally understand that even within our own world, we realize operation, which is the VI admins persona, might want to see this. So we have done in the last few releases, we have actually integrated some of this vRealize network insight data into vRealize operations. If for VMware goes and spells out the vRealize operations as a VI admins persona, they might want to know which application has a problem due to the network. And then we will actually raise those alerts into the vRealize operations. And then the customer can double click down into the vRealize network insight for more deeper troubleshooting. But if they're sitting on a single pane, they will know that. So we do have both internal as well as external partnerships going on. Again, as you saw the vendor list, we do partner with all those vendors, getting how in fact, specific asks into them to get more flow level information to us. For example, to get more metrics information to us, so we can actually lay those out for them as well.